Thank you, Khenpo, for your talk. Khenpo will now take questions from everyone. Before you ask, I'd like to remind everyone to briefly introduce yourself first. Please share your country, name, and field of study, as well as your hobbies and interests. Thank you. And please stand when asking your question. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Khenpo, for taking time out of your busy schedule to give such a wonderful talk and for coming to Mahidol University. We have all learned so much. I'm from Balochistan, Pakistan, and I'm currently a master's student at the Faculty of Public Health here at Mahidol University. I have two questions for you. My first question is, we are born into this world already possessing a soul, and that soul enters our body. So I believe that happiness comes from the soul itself, not from religion. What then is the relationship between happiness and religion? My second question, you mentioned that sincere religious faith can bring peace to humanity and to nations, but could you help explain the violence that extreme religious belief has caused, such as the Taliban's actions in Afghanistan in the 1990s, the 1971 war between Pakistan and Bangladesh, the recent conflicts between Pakistan and Iran in the Balochistan region, and last year's clashes between Buddhists and Muslims in Myanmar? All of these people held deeply devout religious beliefs. Yet, did that bring world peace? Thank you.
To your first question, among the roughly 7 billion people in our world today, according to 2012 statistics, about 5.8 billion identify as religious believers. Some people do believe that happiness can be found within the soul itself, and we don't deny that. But honestly speaking, the happiness that comes through religious faith is fundamentally different from ordinary happiness in its impact on our lives. And when compared to those without any faith at all, there is also a meaningful difference. Not long ago, when I was at Harvard University, someone there shared something similar with me. He used to think his happiness came entirely from within himself. But after he found a religious faith, he told me the happiness he experienced became something far deeper and more profound. So on this question, there may be more for you to explore. I certainly wouldn't deny that happiness exists without faith, but the kind of quiet, peaceful happiness that comes from inner faith compared to other kinds of happiness is something worth reflecting on. As for your second question about what you mentioned earlier, some of the conflicts in the Middle East that are linked to religious belief, we really need to look at this carefully. I think that any country or group, when it enters the political arena, has to reckon with the fact that politics is often a harsh reality. Every politician acts from self-interest and uses all kinds of methods and tools to achieve their goals. So no matter the political party or faction, when religion is used in this way, it can also become a means of protecting their own interests. I've heard this myself, including from religious leaders in the Middle East, who, when interviewed by international media, have all said clearly that their religious teachings do not encourage conflict, violence, or terrorism. These acts are simply a misuse of religion. Their doctrines simply don't sanction such things. And so I firmly believe that true religion calls people toward goodness. It does not incite war, threaten others, or harm people.
I'm a master's student at the School of Public Health, and I'm from Myanmar. My question is, from a Buddhist perspective, what is it that can truly bring us happiness? What kinds of practice lead to lasting joy?
Buddhism offers many practices for attaining happiness. In Theravada Buddhism, for example, there is the practice of contemplating the skeleton. I've visited many places in Thailand where people engage in this practice. Through it, and by contemplating the 12 links of dependent origination, one can eventually attain happiness. That's the Theravada approach. In Mahayana Buddhism, there are also different methods, such as exchanging self and others and cultivating bodhicitta. By generating bodhicitta and aspiring to liberate all beings, with that vast and boundless intention, one ultimately attains the state of a bodhisattva, or even Buddhahood itself. At that point, we would be among the most joyful beings in this world. As for the various methods Buddhism offers for seeking happiness, some bring happiness to both oneself and others, while others bring happiness primarily to oneself. Through these practices, one can attain different forms of liberation and joy.
I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Public Health Administration. You mentioned spiritual nourishment just now. It's interesting because people generally know when they need physical food, organic food for instance, but they often don't know when they need spiritual nourishment. And yet that may be even more essential for finding true happiness. My question is, when do people actually need spiritual nourishment? And how can we help bring spiritual nourishment to others?
When it comes to sharing happiness with others, let's first think about material happiness. If you love the clothes you wear or the car you drive, and if you find genuine happiness through using them, you naturally want to recommend them to others. You tell someone, when you're ready and have the budget, I hope you'll give this car a try. It's really reliable and useful. I'd also recommend this outfit. I think it would work well for you. I recommend it because I have personally used it and found it helpful. Spiritual nourishment works the same way. You first find joy through your own cultural traditions and moral cultivation. When you truly feel that happiness yourself, you can share this inner nourishment with others the way you'd recommend a dish you love. You say, I've used this myself and it has worked very well for me. In many places today, especially in cities in mainland China, where religious faith was once rare, after some people gradually developed religious faith, they found their lives enriched with great joy. Many of them went on to share that joy with others. When you engage with religion, you too can find this happiness. Over time, more people benefit from it. So I think spiritual happiness spreads much like material happiness. We recommend it, share it, and those around us experience its genuine benefit as well.
I'm a pianist. Do you remember me? I once played piano for cows, but I'm also a professor. Our duty as professors is to help these cows become better human beings. But why transform them? Because sometimes they look yet don't really see. They hear yet don't truly listen. They think yet without clarity or direction. So how do we go about turning these cows into good human beings?
That's a sharp question. The image of playing piano for cows actually has an artistic dimension to it. From an artistic point of view, cows do have their pleasures, eating grass, drinking water, living without much worry. Beyond those basic desires, they don't seem to seek much else. But from a human perspective, there is a longing for something higher, because after all, none of us here are actually cows. When you look more closely, you realize that everyone here is human. It's just that under the relentless tide of commerce and the overwhelming pull of money, we nearly lost our way. But if we pause and turn inward, each one of us will recognize that we are not cattle after all. And the teacher too comes to realize it's not yaks he should be playing for, but human beings. Once you reach that point, finding your own inner light becomes quite natural.
Good afternoon, Khenpo. I'm from Myanmar, currently a student at the School of Public Health. My question relates to something you said about religion bringing happiness. I believe that if a person sincerely practices according to their religion, they can find genuine happiness. But some people understand religion intellectually without ever truly practicing it. If they were to practice, they would find a deeper spiritual joy. So my question is, how do you encourage people to actually practice so they can experience that happiness for themselves?
What you've said is very true. Buddhism is a profound teaching. The first step is to understand it on an intellectual level, but understanding alone is not enough. We also need to think deeply to truly contemplate, and in that process of contemplation, doubts will naturally arise. This doesn't seem right, that doesn't seem right. At that point, through debate and inquiry, a great deal of refinement is needed. Once all those doubts have finally settled, we can enter into actual practice. And in that practice, there's an old saying, just as one who drinks water knows firsthand whether it is cold or warm. When you drink the water, you know for yourself. In the same way, it is only through practice that one can truly know the happiness within. Of course, this kind of happiness is very difficult to put into words for others because it is something felt inwardly. But when someone genuinely reaches a certain depth of inner cultivation, they naturally begin to influence those around them. It's not difficult at all because so many people today are searching for something to lean on.
I'm from Nepal and I'm a master's student at the School of Public Health. My question is, in a society that places so much emphasis on material comfort, spiritual happiness, and religion have become secondary concerns, do we have to rely on religion in order to find happiness? I believe that as long as we strive to do our best, feel a sense of fulfillment within ourselves, and are able to help others, that's enough for happiness. Do you think that only religion can bring true happiness?
As a person of faith, I can say that the greatest happiness in my life has come from my religious practice. But as I've said, we have a very inclusive attitude. If someone finds genuine happiness without religion and is still able to help others, that's wonderful. We have never said that anyone must believe. I never have, and I never would. Over 2,000 years ago, when the Buddha himself was alive and teaching, even as he taught the Dharma, he never said that one must believe in Buddhism. I believe many other religions share a similar perspective. Faith, by its very nature, rests on free choice. If someone feels they have no religious faith at all, and they find genuine happiness in that, that is also something to be celebrated. Any religion would rejoice in that without the slightest trace of envy. We often say there is a common ground shared by the religious and the non-religious alike. And that common ground, as the professor just mentioned, is simply this: be a good person. That is truly the heart of religion, to be a good person. And if one manages to be a good person, that is exactly what religion hopes for. And for those without religion, the same holds true. They too can be among the most noble of human beings. So in my view, the most admirable person in any religion is simply a good person. And so from where we stand, there is no such thing as an obligation to believe.
I have one more question. You mentioned that happiness can be found without religion. If that's the case, could you share some practical ways to find happiness outside of a religious framework? For instance, I don't follow any religion myself. Do you have any tips?
People without religious beliefs can certainly be happy too. We often say there are two kinds of happiness. One has to do with the state of your mind. If the mind is unsettled, then what we call happiness is essentially the experience of reduced inner suffering. So to cultivate a peaceful mind, we can turn to other approaches. We can work on reducing greed and letting go of anger. when we do that, happiness arises quite naturally. That is one way. Another way is to regularly help others to live with a spirit of selflessness. A person who does this is, in fact, deeply happy. There are people in this world who hold no religious beliefs, yet they are always helping others, and in doing so, their lives become genuinely joyful. So I believe that a calm mind, free from the burden of greed and anger, combined with a sincere wish to help others, these are truly valuable and practical keys to happiness.
Good afternoon. I'm a doctoral student in the Department of Public Health Management. I'm from southern Thailand. My question is, how do we cultivate inner happiness?
I think there are many paths to inner happiness. For someone who loves music, singing brings joy, but that kind of happiness doesn't last. For those who love to dance, moving to music is a delight as well, but again, it fades. Some young people find momentary happiness in fashion and makeup, but as they grow older and their youthful beauty fades, that happiness fades as well. So if you're genuinely looking for happiness, the best approach is to sit quietly in a temple and visualize the Buddha. When you turn your attention inward and observe your own mind, happiness arises on its own. This kind of happiness is with you when you're young, and it stays with you in old age.
I'm from Myanmar and also a student here. I'm not sure if this is related to your talk, but I'd like to ask whether religious leaders should involve themselves in politics. These leaders carry great influence, and they sometimes do get involved in political affairs. What is your view on this?
My view is this: regardless of the religion, whether we're talking about religious leaders or their followers, if engaging in politics genuinely benefits the world and humanity as a whole, then it's perfectly fine. But if it doesn't truly serve the well-being of the world and humanity, then participation in politics, whether by leaders or lay people, isn't necessarily the right path. Because what we all share at the deepest level is the pursuit of happiness.
Good afternoon. I'm from Italy, studying for a master's in public health. The environment I grew up in is one that strongly promotes consumerism. For centuries, the idea of mind-body separation has had a profound influence on Western culture. People have come to overemphasize the material and physical, leading to rampant consumerism in many areas, while leaving a vast emptiness on the spiritual side. Do you have any advice for Westerners facing this? How can we address this growing imbalance between body and mind?
We live in a rather extraordinary era. More than 200 years ago, Darwin published his work on the origin of species. This theory was later taken up by Hitler, and what followed affected the entire world. The Second World War brought physical devastation to human lives and cities. In a similar way, Darwin's theory of origins has wrought a kind of spiritual devastation across the modern world, both East and West. In 1966, many mathematicians and scientists around the world came together to challenge and refute this theory. Today, all manner of diseases are spreading across the globe. When we separate the body from the mind and focus only on the physical, it becomes very difficult for people to find true happiness. As for the confusion you've described, the spiritual disorientation of modern life, I honestly find it difficult to offer a tidy answer because the life people are living now is in many ways an increasingly superficial one. I've visited a number of countries in Europe and America. I've seen how many people are consumed by a desire for luxury goods, drawn to things that are fictional or cunningly marketed, craving the latest film or the newest status symbol. But in truth, none of it holds much real substance. The things people talk about, the things they chase after, have become increasingly hollow. This includes the online games and animation and online entertainment, which is another direction in which people often lose themselves. What we deeply hope is that people will come to understand that the mind and the body are in fact distinct. Physical pleasure is temporary, while inner peace is where true happiness lives. So if we learn to cherish the inner peace, I believe happiness becomes quite attainable. But if we neglect that inner world and keep chasing after the trends of the times, I'm afraid that for people everywhere, East or West alike, true happiness will feel further and further away.
I'm from India, currently a doctoral student. In this materialistic world, everything is constantly changing. People are changing, thoughts are changing. It sometimes feels like nothing is fixed. In this ever-changing environment, we're also growing and becoming more mature. So how do we even measure happiness? And what is the simplest way to find happiness? Though I'd argue it's not so simple. You mentioned that inner happiness matters more than external pleasure. So what's the most straightforward path to inner happiness? Is it meditating at a temple?
Now, that kind of happiness may not last long, but if you think that's the easiest way to feel happy, you might have a glass of wine, head to a bar, and spend the evening dancing with friends. In that moment, many people do feel a kind of genuine, if temporary, joy. But over time, it may well take a toll on your body, and down the line, there can be quite a few negative effects. So what I'm suggesting is turning towards something quieter and more peaceful. India has a great wealth of this, and Buddhism also originated in India. Through the Buddhist methods of training the mind, even if it's a bit of a challenge in the pace of modern life, it does still bear fruit to some meaningful degree. Hinduism too offers many practices for calming the mind, and in fact, more and more people from around the world are now going to India to study Buddhism and practice yoga. They find happiness there. Many people from China have made that journey to India and come away genuinely happy. I'm confident you'll find much happiness in India as well. In our Tibetan homeland, many young Tibetans long for happiness but struggle to find it, while those who come from outside to visit Tibet often discover a happiness they weren't expecting. In a way, you and some of our Tibetan young people have more in common than you might think.
Then I'll have to go to Tibet.
I was born in Japan and have lived in a number of different places. Before coming to Bangkok, I lived in Cambodia for quite a long time. I have a question, or maybe it's more of a request for guidance. You just recommended that we practice meditation. I was curious, how do you personally meditate?
Spiritual practice is a bit like going to university. It takes a long time before you earn your degree. In the same way, practice unfolds step by step. There are preliminary practices, main practices, and concluding practices, each building on the one before. When it comes to meditation specifically, there are many different methods. The most foundational is the 7-point posture of Vairochana. You sit with your body upright, gaze gently into the open space before you, tilt your chin slightly downward, place your hands in the meditation mudra, draw your arms back just slightly to open the chest, and cross your legs in the full lotus, the Vajra posture. This is what is known as the 7-point posture of Vairochana. The shape it creates is not unlike that of an Egyptian pyramid. When the body holds this posture, the mind naturally begins to settle. Now, if you're hoping for inner happiness, practicing for just a day or two or even an hour or two may not produce much of an effect. But if you sustain this practice over time, the body grows still and the mind follows naturally. Once the mind is still, you begin to discover many wonderful qualities within it. I'm a firm believer that when you close your eyes and turn inward, you'll encounter a happiness you never quite expected.
I'm from Belgium, studying for a master's degree at the School of Public Health. Something you mentioned about Tibet really caught my attention, that even there, some young people are losing interest in Buddhism. I imagine the same is true for other religions. In Europe, fewer and fewer young people are drawn to religion. They're more focused on money and economics, and yet the approach to happiness you're describing through Buddhism feels just as relevant to this younger generation. The world today is a chaotic place with many competing pulls. In Europe, for instance, various religions are actively trying to attract young people. They're working hard to bring people into the fold. So when it comes to this generation, how does Buddhism resonate with them? Will they come to Buddhism? Do they even want to?
Many young people today are drawn to cosmetic surgery, designer clothes, movies, basketball, and long conversations about buying a house someday, getting a car, making money, accumulating wealth through every possible means. But all of these things they're running after. When they reach middle age or old age and look back on their lives, they may find that so much of what they chased so hard in their youth didn't really amount to much. This concerns me deeply. We are not trying to control people through religion or to insist that everyone must adopt this faith. This is nothing like pushing a product through some kind of scheme. For people living in today's world, if they walk away from their spiritual roots, so much of the meaning they've been striving for turns out to be nothing more than chasing a rainbow. So the best approach, I think, is to find skillful ways to help people understand what they truly need. Of course, this takes time and effort, and perhaps by the time all the right conditions come together, many opportunities will already have slipped away. As for me personally, I very much want to help young people, but my capacity is limited, and that weighs on me. We're now using the internet extensively to talk about these things, to share the value of traditional culture and religion, especially the teachings of Buddhism. Young people, I find, are different from others. Once they truly understand something at the level of ideas, they're much more open to it. So the best way forward right now is to use the internet, media, and smartphones to spread wisdom and compassion as widely as possible.
Hello, I'm from the Maldives and I'm a Muslim. I've always been interested in religion, particularly in research at the intersection of religion and science, and I've read quite a bit on the subject. Some of what I've read touches on sleep, waking early, and meditation. People who meditate, who wake up early, who sleep well, tend to be far less prone to depression and seem to be happier than most. If it's not too forward of me, may I ask, and please forgive me if this is an inappropriate question, but how many hours do you sleep and what time do you get up? I've heard that monastics through their practice tend to be more attuned to inner peace. As a Buddhist master, what time do you rise in the morning and how much sleep do you get? Please feel free not to answer if you'd prefer not to. Thank you.
You all seem very curious about this. I have actually read quite a few books on health over the years. Everyone here cares about their physical well-being and their mental well-being as well. Good physical health depends on proper nutrition, adequate sleep, rest, and so on. I recently came across a study suggesting that around 6 hours of sleep is actually optimal for the human body, and that sleeping more than 8 hours regularly may increase the risk of cancer. This was from an American medical study based on large-scale medical research. We all need sleep, but as for exactly how much, that remains a subject of real debate in both medicine and science. As for my own sleep, when I first entered monastic life, I was very diligent in my practice. Some nights it was 2 hours, some nights 3 or 4. These days it's usually 5 or 6 hours, and on days when I'm particularly tired, sometimes 7 or 8. But when I'm at the monastery, 4 or 5 hours generally feels like enough. I've always needed less sleep, even from childhood. As a student, I was consistently the one who slept the least in my dormitory and in my class. After becoming a monk, that hasn't changed much. I still sleep a little less than most, but I do sleep. That's the honest picture of my sleep. I hope that satisfies your curiosity.
Thank you very much.
We'll now invite a student representative to say a few words of thanks to Khenpo.
On behalf of everyone here, I'd like to express our deepest gratitude. Khenpo's presence today has been a true honor. We feel so fortunate to have had the chance to hear your teachings in person. I hope that your words today have not fallen on deaf ears. Your teachings have moved us deeply and left something lasting in our hearts. Thank you again from all of us, and we wish you a wonderful time during your stay in Thailand.